guys, welcome back to part 2 of this early 99 Super Duty project. So as you can see, it's on the lift a different way here. So we had it out and moving around a little bit here to make sure the front end was good, make sure that we got the alignment set up right, and make sure that everything is where it's supposed to be, no funny noises, such like that. So I'm going to go ahead and show you what all we got done to the front of this, and we're going to go ahead and start on the rear today and kind of outline what you got to do for this rear. Now the rear is a lot easier than the front, so that'll be a lot better project to do than this whole front setup. So I'm going to go ahead and show you what we did up front here, just to give you an overview, and in case you didn't see part 1, which is already on the channel. So you can check that one out, and then we'll go ahead and show you this one here and get you up to speed and get this rear axle changed out. All right, so as you can see, we have the stabilizers put on here, which are also in another video that was uploaded. So you can see we got all new fronts of steering on this, new universal joints in there, new upper and lower ball joints, new brake rotors, and we did new wheel seals in there for the bearings, and then also new bearings. You can also see up here that we got the coil buckets installed with the new brake lines. And if you're wondering what this hose is right here, I've heard mixed opinions on this because I've seen these both ways. I've seen them where they have a vent like just like that, and I've seen them capped off. And I've heard guys say if you cap them off, that it can actually suck the hub in and lock it in when you get an atmospheric change that's enough, you know, such as going from a valley to a mountain. But I haven't had that problem, but we went ahead and vented these ones anyway, just because we don't want to run into that issue. Nice PMF track bar on here, and then this is also their steering stabilizer here. So same thing on this side, all new components, wear items, and so on. So we got this whole front end put in here, and as you can see, it doesn't sit too bad. It sits about where it was. Obviously, the upgrade with this is your better hubs here, and then also you get your better brakes and better steering, and then a little bit better ride. So we went over here and we put the radius arm brackets on, and obviously the factory radius arms. He's probably going to end up changing these eventually. I do believe he wants to possibly run a 4-link, so we weren't too worried about cleaning these up and making sure that they were spick and span, because they may be getting changed. So that's the front end for this. As you can see, we still don't have a drive shaft. I'm waiting for it to come back from the drive shaft shop. So hopefully that'll be back here pretty quick, because we need to get that put on, because the front drive shaft was about 1 inch too long. So I ran into this on the project here where the front drive shaft was too long. So we're expecting that, but I wanted to double check. And as you can see, we still don't have any e-brake cables here, but if you run the 2005, 2007 intermediate cable from here back, it will work. So we still have to do some stuff back here. We have to get rid of this bracket up here and make sure that that goes away, because it's going to be in the way. But once you get rid of that bracket, you can run the 05 stuff pretty easily. So we still got to get this rear axle out of here, and we already have the traction bars set off to the side because they're going to be in the way for the air jacks. Something else we did here was we put the fuel sump in here. This is a eBay special, I guess you could say, and it works pretty well. It's had fuel in it now for a while, and it seems to be holding well. And the hose is kind of cheap, but he's going to be changing this fuel system up eventually. So we set this up so that he could at least use the truck for now, but it will be getting changed eventually. I do believe he's going to be putting something a little racy in it, as if it doesn't have that already. So we're going to go ahead and get started on this rear axle here. We have everything disconnected already. So as you can see, the shocks are off. The brake line is off because we have the new one sitting up there it's plumbed in and plugged off so that we could move the truck around without having a massive brake leak. But e-brake cables are off, shocks are off. And the only thing we have to disconnect here is the speed sensor. But everything's disconnected here. So once we get started here, it's just going to be taking out these U-bolts on each side and propping the truck up and removing this axle. So we'll get started on getting this set up to get pulled out of here, and probably have to take these mud flaps off just to get a little bit better clearance. So that shouldn't be too bad. But if we can get the truck up high enough, that shouldn't be an issue, but we'll see. So follow along as we continue this 05 axle swap on this early 99 Super Duty. All right, so you guys can see we got this all supported here. Got the frame supported up here with this jack. We got the rear axle supported with this jack. And as you can see, the early 99 axle has a forward-facing caliper on the driver's side. So that makes this a little bit of an oddball, because as you can see on the other side there, the passenger side is rearward facing. So this is a unique rear axle. However, we have the drive shaft off of here. As you can see, we got the bolts out, and then the universal is out of this drive shaft here, since we're going to replace that rear universal anyway, because we have to put a flange on there, and I'll show that to you in a second here. So this axle is pretty much ready to come out. We just got to take the U-bolts off and get this thing dropped down and get it out of here. So we've got the vehicle speed sensor unplugged. The one thing you do need to do is you need to save that vehicle speed sensor and put that in the newer axle, because this plug is different. So you'll need to save that. So don't destroy it. So let me grab the flange and I'll show that to you also. So we have the flange here. So you can see that part number if you're looking for it, even though that's not the part number, it's just a code. But you need this because, as you can see, there is a yoke on this rear axle, whereas the axle we're putting in has a flat flange. So you need this. And then obviously a 1410 Spicer U-joint, because we're replacing that rear U-joint. So that's for Super Duty. And then since we are using the flange, you need a pack of these 4 bolts. So you'll need these as well. So that'll connect the drive shaft to the axle here. And we're going to go ahead and get these U-bolts loosened up. And we'll get this axle out of here so that we can start getting this other one in. So the other thing we're going to have to do is we're going to also have to remove these track bar mounts off of this axle. So that'll be a little bit of fun, and get those welded onto the new one. So we get this camera set up here, and we'll get these U-bolts off and get this axle out of here. All right, so as you can see here, we got the drive shaft off of there, and we got the U-bolts off, and this thing's ready to come out. So this is what's nice about these air jacks is you can use them to prop up the axle just like this. So because we use forks to get this out of here, that piece of long wood there will get underneath the forks and hold the pinion up to keep the axle from rotating. So we're going to go ahead and get this axle out of here. That way we can get the tabs cut off of it for the traction bars and get the new axle set up and get those put back in here. So that'll be our next step here. So let's get this axle out of here. So the reason I put that jack back up there is just for safety, because I got to cut those tabs off of that axle, and I want to make sure that this truck isn't going to be sitting here a little bit funny. You know, something could happen, something could give way. This is just an extra insurance. So one thing that I did do was I ended up taking the shock mounts off because they were right in the way of where I wanted to get the forks here. So I didn't have to worry about trying to get that fork in between a shock bracket and a tube. And as you can see, the board works really, really well for keeping the axle pretty flat. That way it's not rolling around on the forks. So what we're going to do now is we're going to cut these tabs off. I'm going to have some time in that, getting those tabs cut off of there, and then we can get this new axle put in this truck. Okay guys, so we've got the new axle in here, and as you can see, the traction bars are put back on. They're not bolted in tight yet, but when you're doing traction bars here, as you can see, that bolt's not tight. You want all of your weight on the back of the truck. Okay, so now remember we had a jack here in the middle. So once you get your weight off of that middle jack and put all back on this rear axle, that can give you your length for your traction bars. Okay, so you always want to have your vehicle weight on before you weld your brackets on or bolt your brackets on, whatever you decide to do. So as you can see, we got these welded on. And the way I did that was I put it all together, held it all together, and then took one U-bolt off at a time to get each side of that bracket. So get it tacked on there, and then take your bar out so you can get a full weld on it. So the one thing I do want to show you here is I was talking about the plugs on the speed sensors. So the one on the left here is 05 to 07. The one on the right here is pre-05. So that is actually very, very similar to the OBS trucks as well. So you always want to make sure that you don't destroy your old speed sensor when you're doing an axle swap, because you do need it, because it will go in that differential. So we got to put that new sensor in there, and then we also have the new universal and flange put on here. And as you can see, this is the unmodified rear drive shaft here. A little crusty, but not bad for its age. All right, so you put the flange on there, and we replaced the U-joint as well, just because you don't want to be pushing your old caps into the new flange there, because that can cause you problems, so you don't want to do that. As you can see, we got the tubes welded on this as well, since he has some big plans for this truck. So we'll get some more stuff put on here. You can see we got this side all welded in. So we got to get new brakes put on here. We're going to go ahead and finish tightening up these U-bolts, because right now they're not tight, they're not torqued down, they're just snugged up there, so we didn't have to worry about it flopping around. And we can go ahead and keep getting this truck put back together here. We're on a time crunch here today, so not going to be a whole lot of videoing going on, but we're trying to keep you up to date on this so you guys can see what you got to tackle on your axle swap for these trucks. So our next step is going to be doing the brakes and getting that all set up, put the brake lines on, and getting the vent tube put in. So the one thing I would like to mention is, as you can see here, there is no vent tube put in, so we have to put that in. One thing you can do is put anti-seize on that before you install it, because if you don't, let me show that to you here. See how it gets all grimy? So we're going to clean this up, put some anti-seize on there before we put it on. That way it doesn't become a problem later in the future. And make sure that that tube is also clean, because the inside of these get gummed up pretty bad. But that one's not too bad, but usually they're plugged completely solid. So make sure you do that before you install that tube. So we're going to go ahead and get these brakes put on and try to get this truck done today. All right. So as you can see, we've got the brake rotors on here, calipers. We got all the lines made back here. So what else we did, since we used new lines here, we did copper nickel, and it flares nice, it's easy to install, and it's easy to bend. So that's what we used back here. And then also your e-brake cables. Now, if you don't have 05 top plates, these guys here, you have to drill this hole and put a bolt in it to hold the e-brake cable. I reused a hole here because this truck's not real high in the back. Generally, that wants to be a little bit taller. We need it to be up almost where that push pin is. But we put it here so I didn't have to drill 2 holes in the frame. And then under here, we had to cut off the bracket for the old e-brake because it was interfering with the cable that you see in the picture here. And then we had to drill these holes up here for that one. So that's where that's supposed to go. And it's supposed to be above this leaf spring hanger so that it doesn't rub and cause a problem. So, in doing all of this, you can see it routes into the factory spot here and then goes over and attaches to the other cable. So we don't have the intermediate cable hooked up yet, as you can see, but it will go right on the end of there and go all the way up to the front here and attach to the other one. But moving forward, as you can see, we painted our welds here and painted the weld on the tube there, keep them protected. But the e-brake cables are installed except for the other side. So the reason the other side is not installed is because we don't have a shock mount yet. And as you can see, the jack is where the shock is supposed to be. So we have to wait to hook this side up because this shock needs to be flipped, because we have the shock tower in the back on this truck, and in 05 to 07, this shock goes forward. So instead of moving the shock mount, which is a pain, you just flip the bracket, just like the same on the OBS trucks. So this one also is not installed either because we have to put the shock mount on. Get the tires put on this and get the shock mounts put on, and then we can go ahead and start tightening up the traction bars and get all these little things buttoned up. Okay, so we got all the rear end put back together. As you can see, we have the drive shaft put back on here, and it bolts on with this flange and universal like I described earlier. We have all the e-brake cables made up here, and I ended up using the old Axles one shock bracket on this side because it fit a lot better than the 05 and up one. And all of the e-brake cables are put on here, as you can see. Shock mounts are put on. And then we also have the e-brake cables all hooked up. So shocks are on, and it's been sitting here on its own weight. We've got some fluid put in the rear axle here. It's all filled up, ready to go. Brake lines are all made, shocks are on. Very, very simple setup with these, which is nice. So, can't really complain too much. And like I said, we got the e-brakes cables all put in, routed in the way they're supposed to be routed, and hooked up to the 9904 front cable. So e-brakes do work as they should, which is a plus. And we're just about ready to take this thing outside and get a good view of it with the swap done. So it's all done here. And as you can see, tires don't stick out too bad, which is great, front or rear. And that's the 05 axle swap on a 99 Super Duty. So not too bad. If you guys wanted to try it yourselves, I would say it's very, very easy to do. We had some extra help here with the lift and the jacks and the proper equipment. So this is something that anybody can do. I've done them before without all these extra little equipment pieces, but definitely makes it a little bit harder. So appreciate you guys following along with it, and keep moving along here. So I thank you for watching this video, and if you like all these, then please subscribe to my channel. See you on the next one.